Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Wellness Shot. My name is Dr. David Orman, and this is for the week of March 23rd. Today's not only going to be a great show, but a very special show because I have an exceptional guest here named Bill Parravano from North Carolina. Bill and I have crossed paths. I don't think we met in person yet,
I don't think so.
but we have crossed paths many times because we have a deep admiration and respect for our instructor named Vladimir Vasiliev, who teaches a Russian martial art of Sistema, which we both are, I would say, diehards.
I would say,
Good a word as any. Yes. And Bill, I copied some of your material, and one of the things that caught my attention as I read your bio. Now, if you would go ahead and give a little bit of information about yourself.
yeah, I got involved into all of this back in 99, 2000.
Hmm.
I had a knee injury. I was in judo and I dislocated my left knee 4 times
Oh.
and then went to the doctor. Had reconstructive surgery on the ligament in my left knee. They took out 2 pieces of meniscus
Mm.
and it changed the trajectory of my life in many ways and got me more on a healing path.
Okay.
And on that path, I found Systema,
Hmm.
which is, from my perspective of it, I see it as a healing art disguised as a martial art. And then I also studied an osteopathically based style of body work called orthobionomy that had its origins was in the osteopathic principle of positional release or strain counter strain.
Hmm.
And it was founded by a British osteopath who was also a judo instructor. So I was
Hmm.
that my connection was it was a martial arts understanding of the body work that drew me to train orthobionomy. And I studied both of those parallel for 5 years or so when I realized they were both talking about the nervous system from just
Mm.
different perspectives. And then as I continued to study, started to see how there was a meshing and an interweaving of the martial art with the body work. And that's has been my most recent evolution of my studying my own healing path.
Fantastic. You probably get this as well, but if you talk about martial arts, a lot of times people are, or at least the patients that I see, are often surprised. And then I mentioned back in older times, you had to learn to heal before you learned to harm. And I think Sistema is one of the few arts that has carried that along the way to this day and beyond, of course.
Yeah,
One of,
oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead,
sorry.
please.
I haven't studied. I studied judo and I studied Sistema, and I
Mm,
kind of kept blinders on in a way because it was so rich and so deep of what I was studying. I didn't look at other martial arts or things like that. I didn't deviate from what I was studying because there was so much to learn.
hmm. One of the things that caught my attention as I was reading some of the information on your site, and I'm paraphrasing here, you used the phrase, "Nothing defines who I am." And I thought that was an incredibly powerful statement. And I wonder if you can touch on that.
Well, I think there's a tendency for us as humans needing to be labeled in order for people to identify us. I know that there's a lot of ego that went in for me when I was a judo black belt,
Hmm.
and I identified as that judo black belt. And when I left judo and began studying Sistema, there's no belts, there's no ranks, there's no, it's like ambiguous in a way.
Hmm.
But when you walk in a room, you recognize a person's understanding of things by how they carry themselves and how they present themselves. So there isn't, you can't label them and say, oh, well, this one's better than that one, or whatever the label is. And there's been a lot of various areas of study that is difficult to pigeonhole me and say, hey, I'm just a martial artist, or I just do body work, or I
Hmm.
just, it's like there's a lot of different things that I've studied, law and permaculture and things that it's like, well, you can't really pigeonhole me and say, oh, it's just this one thing that I do.
In my study of acupuncture in the last 30 years and treating people, one of the things that you come across is a term, a philosophy called Taoism.
Hmm.
And in Taoism, whenever you label someone, you narrow things.
Hmm.
And whenever you remove a label, you basically stand in front of the ocean of all possibilities. And now you have so many more choices. And I thought that was a fantastic thing that you described as well as wrote. Okay, couple of questions looking at your site.
Hmm.
Um, you mentioned how you became the knee guru. What are the most common ailments that you treat?
Arthritis.
Arthritis?
That,
Yeah.
that tends to be um, most, and arthritis is, from my understanding, is a catch-all term for stiffness, achiness, pain in a joint. And a lot of times when the Western medical model isn't able to pigeonhole or label
Hmm.
something, it's arthritis. And when you get stiff, achy, painful joints, inflamed joints, it all goes down to this basic understanding that the joint is dehydrating.
Now for the audience, could you explain that when you say dehydrating? Do you mean just fluid or fluid plus?
Well, there's fluid. We have synovial fluid in the joint
Hmm.
that's supposed to lubricate the joint. So when the joint moves,
Hmm.
it helps the joint glide, kind of like grease in a joint of a vehicle. Um, when we take on excess tension patterns in the physical body, it squeezes on the joints, kind of like me squeezing my fist here.
Hmm.
The joint begins to dehydrate. You see the knuckles start getting white. And when I open the hand will be white, but then you see the blood rush in. It'll
Hmm.
get pink. The hand will return to its normal color. Well, this happens in a joint when from accidents, injuries, surgeries, traumas, stress, it causes the joint to squeeze like this. And when it squeezes like this, it squeezes a synovial fluid out of the joint.
Hmm.
So the joint becomes dehydrated, kind of like a sponge that's sitting next to your sink. It just dries out after time because there's no water being put on the sponge. What happens is this excess tension in the nervous system that dehydrates the joint squeezes out the synovial fluid, and now when you move the joint wears because it doesn't have the lubrication anymore, and that causes under when you look at it in a X-ray, CT scan, MRI, something like that, you'll see it looks kind of like battery acid is
Hmm.
kind of going throughout the joint because the joint's wearing. It doesn't have the uh, fluid that it needs to keep it lubricated, so it
Lubricate.
doesn't hurt.
So walk me through. You see person X and they come in and they say, my hips are sore, my knees are sore. I went to a doctor, they said arthritis and take XYZ medication, but I don't want to take it. I want to address it. What would be a typical walkthrough that you would do?
Tell me, I look at it from a perspective that a very close friend of mine refers to as sequencing. His name is Dr. Charlie Beck. He's an osteopath just north of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Mhm.
And he teaches this concept called sequencing. And sequencing is prioritizing what is going on in the physical body. Meaning, like if a person comes in and they say they got this diagnosis and my knee's doing this and my hips are doing this, I'm going to ask them, well, what hurts most? What
Hmm.
hurts second most? And what hurts third? In your attention, if you were to scan your body, what's first, second, and third? And I would address what hurts the most first.
Hmm.
I would address what hurts second most second, and what hurts third. And it sounds like an oversimplification, but what happens is when I do this, the person feels safe, supported, listened to. And when you're
Hmm.
looking at it through a neurological lens, the ability of the nervous system to shift from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state increases when we support the body where it hurts the most comfortably and move the nervous system to a parasympathetic state, shift it from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. So now when I go to the place that hurts the second,
Hmm.
it's already going to be easier to work with that place because we're not fighting. I'm not going to a person's right big toe because their left knee hurts because I know more than them. I'm just going, okay, your knee hurts. I'm going to support your knee. You tell me as I work with the joint, which
Hmm.
feels more comfortable, which relieves the pain, which makes it easier to be in to feel your knee. And that drops their nervous system. And part of it in the understanding that the tension that is manifesting in the knees or in the hips is going from the feet all the way up to the head. So as we drop that
Interesting.
neurology and we
Mm.
relax that larger tension pattern that's going on in the body, it's going to be easier for the hips to relax, for the knee to relax, and all the other connections all the way up and down the leg to to feel more comfortable faster.
It's kind of interesting because as you're talking, I'm translating, so to speak, in my head to, I'm going to make up a word, acupuncturese.
Sure.
And we do something similar in that
Mhm.
we'll often treat the kidney energy because the kidneys govern, among other things, the skeletal system, but they
Mhm.
also control the emotions of fear and courage, and especially fear. And fear you can correlate, of course, with the sympathetic nervous system because you have that hyperactivity.
Mhm.
And once the kidney energy gets balanced, once it gets stronger, once it uh, creates more of a flow throughout the body. The parasympathetic or the calming aspect of the
Mhm.
body, or the what we would call the yin aspect of the body, starts coming into play. So even though we're going right toward the center, we're coming at it in a little bit different
Yeah.
spoke, but yeah, very, very similar. Kind of interesting. Yeah. So do you do a lot of manual, I don't know if you call it adjustments or
Uh,
therapy, massage therapy type work, or what would go ahead and
yeah.
explain that if you would,
When
please.
I work with clients in person, it takes place on a massage table.
Hmm.
However, clients are fully clothed, and what I'm doing is getting that sense of what's going on in their body. What hurts? Your knees, your hips, your neck. What is happening? And then prioritizing it or sequencing as to
Hmm.
what will address first, second, and third. And then what I'm working with is the intrinsic movement of a joint and or muscle, tendon, ligament, fluid, fascia to find where the ease of movement is. So, it martial arts principles, it's your opponent pushes on you, you don't pull back, you pull,
Hmm. Hmm.
you uh you push, and when your opponent pulls on you, oh wait, however I said that, it's
You do opposites. Yeah.
we're not opposing the force.
All right.
So I'm finding these micro ways the joint moves, an ease of movement that is essentially an imbalance in the joint, over exaggerating the pattern that's going on in the joint or muscle,
Hmm.
and then let the nervous system do the heavy lifting. Because in that position of comfort, it engages the reflexes that allows the nervous system to reorganize around the comfort that we created in the knee, in the hip, in the lower back. And those reflexes fire up and down the body and do all the heavy lifting for me or for the client. I don't have to fight the body to get it to do what it already wants to do. I'm just supporting it in a way that allows it to do so.
How do y'all work around something such as a tear, a labral tear, or micro fractures, even something along those, something where there's structural mechanical
Sure.
issue.
Uh, so it's an interesting thing. I do believe that there's a lot of misdiagnoses going on. So something I had a client just a couple months ago that was diagnosed having a labral tear because
Mhm,
she had pain in her hip. And we relaxed the tension pattern that was going on in her hip. Um, Bigger conversation, she had scoliosis. And as her body was unwinding and letting go of the patterns from the scoliosis, the tension was shifting in different parts of her structure.
mm,
One of the tension patterns that showed up was this tension in the hip. She got a diagnosis of a labral tear. But if it truly was a labral tear, then just after a week or after a session, that would have still continued to hurt,
mhm.
but it went away.
Now you,
So,
I'm sorry, you used the term tension pattern. Can
yes.
you explain that, please?
Yes. So, in order for us to sit, to stand, to move, to lie down, to get up, go down to the ground, we have to have a certain amount of tension in our body. It's what
Mhm,
we study in Systema. We study tension, relaxation. When there's an imbalance of tension in certain areas, that will cause a bunching of nerves in a certain area of the body. So we have so many nerves per square inch in our skin.
mhm.
But the more tension we have in an area, the more concentrated so many nerves per square inch will happen, which means it hurts more. And that tension pattern is going to be the experience of the nervous system, or the person that's feeling that will feel recognize it as pain,
Mhm.
or it could be ticklish, tight, tender, stiff. It could be a whole list of different ways the person would describe their experience of the tension that is built up in a certain area.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What
Yes,
I'm hearing behind what you're saying also is there's a lot of emotional and or psychological components that can be either brought up and released.
absolutely. It allows a pathway for whatever is held in the body physically, those emotions, the mental states that hold the body physically now have a pathway to move.
There was a physician 1940s in England named Edward Bach who took an ancient principle that basically said all disease is a result of constrained or stuck emotion.
Mm.
And it sounds like what you're doing is expanding on that, maybe addressing the emotions not directly, but through the body.
Yeah, like a lot of times we don't, people that aren't comfortable expressing their emotions,
Hmm.
that can be like a real thing. Like I have a nonprofit that works with first responders and veterans, and a lot of times they've experienced more than most
Yes.
traumatic experiences. And it's very difficult to talk about those things or to feel those emotions because the emotions kind of like they don't know how to move. It's like I just saw this terrible accident with a child involved, or, you know, all
Yes.
sorts of
Yes.
different scenarios. So there's this uh, constipation of emotions in the body. Like, I don't know whether to cry or scream or be angry, or, it's like it gets stuck somehow in
Mhm.
the nervous system. And it gets stuck in the physical body, which will compromise our structure in some way. You can tell when a person is their shoulders are up towards their
Mhm.
ears, or they're sad and they're drooping forward. This all manifests in the physical body. So when you create comfort in the physical body, you can release those tension patterns, and those emotions can begin to move, and you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to label it. So it gives an easy way for the facilitation of release of emotions out of the body without getting into the story of why or how come, or you
Yes,
should or
yes.
shouldn't feel this way or that way. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh,
Mm,
that's where it's stuck. We release it. Go for a walk, take a nap,
yes.
drink some water, you know?
Probably 50-ish% of the people that I see are veterans, and a lot of them have seen things that the human spirit is not meant to see.
Mhm.
And to be able to express it is, I think, I consider it an emotional calcification. And
Yeah.
to go directly into it is almost a violation. But when you
Mhm.
gently approach it through easing of physical pain, that gives
Mhm.
them the doorway, the opportunity to, yeah, either walk through it or begin to release it. So you don't have to hold on to things
Mhm.
that again aren't aiding your life. They happened, yes, you can't forget them. Well, maybe, but they don't have to define you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the charge of it doesn't have to be as great.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
sometimes we
yes.
don't have to make sense of it. It's real big when it first happens, and then we don't know what to do with it. But if we can diffuse that charge in different ways, that's not going through the front door and,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
going into the center of the vortex of the experience, and we could diffuse it somehow, then maybe they don't have to deal with it right now. They could set it to the side, and other things in their life can change, and then maybe come back and visit it at some other point in time when they're more resourced, or something's different, or that they have the right person to talk about it with, or whatever it is.
Yeah, you are giving people the gift of expressing things safely. And
Mhm.
you're giving them the access to their innate safety. And that is a tremendous gift, because once you have that, then you can become what you're capable of becoming. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Boy, you hit on a lot of these already. Um, oh, here's a question for you.
Mhm.
Prevention. What are the most successful, most useful, most valuable preventive measures that a person can take?
I'd say increasing awareness.
How would they go about doing that?
When you cultivate awareness, paying attention in systema, like when we pay attention to our breath,
Hmm.
we pay attention to tension in our body, meaning, like, well, if my shoulders are tense, I could tense them up more and relax them. My arm is tense, I could tense the arm more up and relax it. Isolating tension. All of that cultivates awareness in a way that we begin to see how tension builds up. Because a lot of times, when people become aware of pain, it's already when they've ignored it for a long period of time.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's gotten to a critical mass. It's gotten to a place where, well, all I did was bend over and pick up a Kleenex off the floor and my back went out. I don't know what happened. Well, it's because there was a bunch of other things that, if we walk that back, that happened on a daily basis. Stress, tension, ignoring what was going on, not having conversations that needed to be had, not drinking water. I mean, like, all sorts of things. And then it, some, the straw that broke the camel's back seems like an insignificant thing that now is this traumatic experience in your life. In actuality, it was the lack of awareness
Mm,
for days, weeks, months, years, sometimes even decades, that led to the experience. Like, me dislocating my left knee 4 times before I went to the doctor was not a heightened level of awareness on my part. It's like I had to ignore a lot of stuff to get to that level for finally, um, it was like the two by four across the forehead to go, oh, pay attention to this, Bill. This needs to be
Yeah.
looked at. You need to address these things, which has now been a 27-year journey um, since those knee dislocations and surgery and all of that kind of stuff. So
So
I'd say awareness.
yeah, that's a great one. So would you say this is a true statement? Your injuries, not at the moment, not at the time, but your injuries actually ended up being a blessing in a painful disguise.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Mm.
Like everything that I'm doing today is a direct result of my knee injury. Everything. Direct
Here's
result.
impossible question to answer. Could you have learned it in retrospect? Could you
Mhm.
have learned it a different way?
Uh-uh. No, I
Mm,
was, I was there. I had a lot of ego. Not saying that I don't now, but I'm saying it was like a ridiculous amount of ego, and I would just push and drive, and I wouldn't have got it if it wasn't that painful. I
wow.
also wouldn't have signed up for it if I would have knew it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. Uh, God doesn't give us what we want, gives us what we need. And that was like one of those things that I needed, that level of pain in order to connect the dots for me and
Mm.
put my life in a different direction.
Well, that is yeah, it's a great piece of information. I had a teacher once who said, no matter what is going on, find out what the lesson is. And when you find out what the lesson is, you'll find the healing right next door to it. And I
Hmm.
found that to be a truism also.
Hmm.
Well, we could go on for a few more hours, but let's go ahead
Sure.
and end here. I really appreciate your time and your exceptionally great information that you had. And for those who want to schedule something with Bill, they can go to thekneepainguru.com, the THE knee KNEE pain PAIN guru GURU all one word so to speak.com. He's in North Carolina, exceptional. And if you're interested in any kind of martial art and you happen to be in the North Carolina area,
Asheville Sistema.
Asheville Sistema. There we go. Thank you again, Bill. Much appreciated. Thank
Thank
you,
you, Dave.
everybody, for listening. If you like this, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.